To the 12 tribes of Jaja children scattered abroad in the name of the Messiah and Jesus Christ of Nazareth, the King who rules the earth. This is part 2 of the Igbos who are scattered mostly in Nigeria and other countries of Cameroon and so on. And a lot of them have moved to the west now, how they are the Hebrews of the Bible. One of the things you can look at right there is the Scotch plaid, which is Highland plaid, or we call it bandana in the west. And all our different islands and the different Israelite tribes have their own flags, their own plaids, their own traditions that lead back to the 12 tribes. For example, in CARICOM, Caribbean Community, the community is set up as a form of government in addition to the theocracy that was in the book of Acts, where all the Israelites had everything in common. Christ sent the apostles from the tribe of Judah, Benjamin, Levi. Some of the other kingdoms were there with them too, because they waited in Jerusalem to receive the Holy Spirit with power, and then they went to the other lands to tell them about the kingdom of heaven, which is established on earth right now. Christendom is the largest kingdom, but we still have to reach out to our brothers and sisters in all lands. Some of them remained in Africa, some of them were sold to the west, some of them went from even Europe back to Africa, some went from Canada, England, some went from America, some went from the islands back to Africa. It's knowledge will increase and we'll be traveling to and fro. And the Bible said, wherever the soles of our feet shall tread, we'll possess the land. That was given to the Hebrews. So we have always been a wandering nation, conquering nation. The Most High said the earth is His and everything in it, and we are His children, so we're going to enjoy the fatness of the earth. So this is just one of the ways you can tell. This is part 2 I was doing. So our plaids, this is one of them with my fringes and the ribbon of blue. They also have a blue tradition in their culture where they say the blue is different from the blue in the west. Blue is the color of the Most High, and white the color of the saints. They wear white. They have blue ribbons. We used to have blue ribbons in our hair in primary school. We have blue uniforms with white blouse. That's most of the uniform that we wear in Jamaica. So you'll see the traditions and the looks, they look alike. You'll see them with the little fringes. I don't know why their colors are red and white, but you'll see it's a culture of stripes, fringes. When you see they have broidered work on the clothes, that's something that we do as well. And borders, because the Most High, that's a specific dress code that He gave to the children of Israel. All right, so as for covering the head, you see they have the culture of covering the head just like we do to this day. And some of the shirts, you see the broidered work. It's also showing up in their garments, okay? And the children of Israel are black. They're the color of burnt brass. They have woolly hair. They wear locks, like Jamaicans wear a lot more locks than them. But we not supposed to be wearing locks anymore. If you're male, you're supposed to wear your beard. And Ouladah, he tells you the men wear their beard. They wore calico, they wore Muslim. He also went to Smyrna where the Israelites were when he was a slave. So they all still in the same cities. And they do the hair, because we wear our hair in braids, broidered hair. That's what the Israelites wear from the beginning of time till now. And see some more of it there. Paul say your beauty shouldn't come from braided hair. It must come from your righteousness. So this is just some of the fringes, how they do theirs, and they cover their heads. We do ours differently, okay? So that's just some of the clothes that they have. And as I was pointing out to you, we have the same broidered work, very intricate. So when you see the skill level of the Israelites, you know they are very sophisticated people. So this is kind of like the blue that I was talking about. We have royal blue, royal purple, white, red, gold, silver, because those were the colors that came down to us in a lot of the works that we had to do in the scriptures. And of course, you know, Joseph coat of many colors. Maybe that's where they get some of these colors from. But each time you go and you look, you can see that we have the same kind of skills, because we had a lot of smiths and we were skilled in broidered work, in borders, in the ribbon of blue, things like that. So that's just some of what the Igbo people look like then. So they were scattered to the west. Never mind that they never came to get us. We had to be the ones fighting their causes from the west when they had the Biafra war and so on. Haiti sent support. We're always trying to free them in the music with Marcus Garvey. They said the Biafran flag is named off of the Marcus Garvey flag, and he was able to get a lot of the Israelites back to Africa. So Ouladah Equiano, I was looking at his book. You can read it on line or Byte or audiobooks on YouTube has it. It's the life of Ouladah Equiano. That's his given name, and of course they gave him a slave name. So he was saying they wore calico and muslin, and as I was telling you, our clothes has to be 100% wool, 100% linen, 100% cotton, 100% silk, or 100% leather, just like the Most High told us to. So for example, Jamaicans love Clarks, right? Clarks is one of the origin that we wear. The word Clarks come from cleric, and I'm not supporting any particular brand, but we're the British, so everywhere we go, our shoes go with us. The original brands that we wore, they came from Egypt. The design came from Egypt. The children of Israel were in Egypt. When the church was established, we became clerks or clerics. We go and preach the gospel. So that's why we wear genuine leather shoes named Clarks to this day. So sometimes the things that we do, you don't know where they come from. So this, okay, is a sandal as well. This one comes from Ethiopia, and it's genuine leather, because our shoes that I wear anyway is genuine leather. This one is like boots, and that's like for winter. That's also genuine leather. This one comes from, I forgot where in Africa. It's made in Africa. Of course, Africa is a continent, but it's genuine leather, and it's soul of Africa. So our shoes are genuine leather because that culture comes from the Bible. So it's all different types of leathers, but I make sure I wear leather at my children too. So that one is also leather. So they have skilled in leather work. They have skilled in the borders, the blue, and the plaids. The Highland plaids, my foreparents were ruling Europe. The same Highland plaids, you'll see it in all the islands. You'll see it in a lot of the Hebrew tribes or the Israelite tribes in Africa. And as I said, you'll see the blue and you'll see the broidered work. Okay, so I just put some of these together just to see how you can link the Israelites based on their technology. If they have palaces and towers, and he said they use javelin, things like that. So the blue is Exodus 25 verse 4, and blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen. Yeah, and the goats here, like, you know, the leather that comes from the animals, we don't waste anything. We use them for shoes, handbags, belts, things like that, purses. He said they had, the women wear gold on their arms and legs, and they spun and they weave cotton. They made earthen vessels. We have earthen vessels in the Caribbean to this day, where before fridge you had to put your water in them to keep it cool. A lot of our people are known for the broidered work and the spinning, including Mary, and that's where our clothes come from. So those North American people who you see don't have this intricate culture, they're not Israelites. The Israelites had wattle and daub technology that they use in the Igbo culture. We use it in Jamaica. All of you will always say, oh, go back to a hut. Well, that hut technology there comes from the Bible. Even Joseph of Arimathea, he built the wattle and daub hut technology in Scotland when he preached the gospel in Britain. So that's why today we still have that hutches and those tourist areas. We still have wattle and daub, just like they had in Igbo land. So he said they had tobacco pipes as they do in Turkey, And Ouladah Equiano, he was trained in the javelin. The javelin appears in Numbers 25 verse 7. They offered victuals. Victuals is ground produce. Most Edomites, they don't eat that kind of food. And like your yam, your cassava, and them sitting there, them, they know what them there. Offered victuals. So victuals is in Genesis 14 verse 11, Leviticus 25 verse 37. And also you see victuals at Solomon's table, the fowls and so on, the fatted fowls. He said their primary diet was bullocks, goats, and poultry. And they had stewed pepper, spices, and salt. Salt comes from the covenant of salt. Stews come from like the pottage that Jacob made, and Esau was hungry and he wanted some of the pottage. You see the same type of red pottage in their culture. We don't use a lot of tomato the way they use it, but it's still in our culture too, like the lentils, the red soups. They put a lot of tomato in their soups and stuff like that. We cook it different, but we still have that knowledge to this day. He said they traded dry fish to this day. Salt fish and ackee is the national dish of Jamaica. So we use a lot of salt fish like herring, shad, mackerel, cod. Other nations, they don't use a lot of dried fish like that. So he said they traded that because they weren't living near the sea. Ouladah Equiano, he said he never saw a white person until he got captured. He never saw the sea until he got captured. Personally, I grew up in Jamaica. I never saw a white person either until I was around 7 when I saw the tourists. So that's not unusual even in this time, you know. So they had plantains, India corn, yams. They had wives, they had slaves. They washed their hands before their food. And of course, that's a tradition of the elders that has come down to us to this day. You always wash your hands before you eat your food. If you look in the Nigerian movies, which we don't really do movies because a lot of that have to do with Babylon and stuff. And a lot of that leads to debauchery and so on, but they do it. So if you look in a lot of the Nigerian movies, you see when they're going to eat, they bring a bowl of water and they still wash their hands to this day. You see still the women dress modestly to this day and they cover their head. A lot of things with these Nigerians though, and a lot of the Israelites, they follow a lot of customs of the heathen. Even Ouladah Equiano, he said he was trying to wash off his skin to become white, and he started to make his hair to look white. And a lot of the Nigerians and Africans, they bleach their skins to look white, and also to envy their oppressors. When Solomon says, envy not thy oppressors and choose none of his ways. So they wear a lot of fake hair, a lot of false hair, but they're really supposed to wear their hair natural and cover it. So a lot of the times when destruction come upon the children of Israel is because of the things that they do that the Most High tell us not to do. So back to the plantains. We eat the plantains to this day, the India corn. Well, corn didn't come from India because even in the time of Joseph, he was storing corn when the famine was coming. So that would have come down from our friends, our forefathers as well. So the yams, the wives, the slaves, they had multiple wives, but they're not supposed to practice polygamy anymore. Polygamy has been abolished by the Synod of Worms. It's abolished in the New Testament too. Deuteronomy 17:17 said, do not multiply wives. So even though it was okay, not all the Old Testament carried forward to the New Testament. You still have to keep the laws, the statutes, the commandments, the ordinances, the Sabbaths, the dietary laws, the holy days, which Ouladah Equiano was telling the man that they did all the holy days, the sacrifices, just like the Jews of the Bible, because of course his tribe was one of the lost tribes of the house of Israel. He also said they practiced necromancy. They practiced libation made for the spirits, and they use liquors such as palm wine, and they use perfumes was a luxury. Now Deuteronomy 18 verse 20 to 12 says enchanters, charmers, those who consult familiar spirits, necromancers, wizards are abominations, and no abomination is going to enter into the kingdom of heaven, which is why a lot of the Igbos end up as servants, as slaves in the transatlantic slave trade, because the Most High says those who practice these things, they're going to be destroyed. So the Biafra War, all of those things that you went through, look into your traditions. A lot of it is mixed with voodoo, idolatry, sorcery, necromancer, enchanting, witchcraft, consulting familiar spirits, pouring libations, and the punishment for that is death, slavery, destruction, which is why a lot of the Igbos went into slavery in the first place. If you all repent and you all want your countries back from the Muslims, you have to learn how to repent and to pray and to fortify yourselves and to train your children in warfare, because you got to defend yourself. If we didn't fight the Crusades, none of us would have been left to this day, but we had to fight off those Muslims and those pagans and establish Christendom worldwide. So you have to know that the Most High give you all the tools to survive in this earth. He gave you the fatness of the earth. You know, the Ouladah Equiano said, y'all lived in the best lands, you had the most gold, all of that stuff. Y'all wanted for nothing, so you didn't give God thanks. And you went to do a lot of sorcery, so that's how comes the Igbos went into slavery. He said they had the watchland dog, the thatch roof houses, and those are the same as Joseph of Arimathea built in Scotland and the islands, and we descend from the Irish. I'm from Irish town, and we trace ourselves back to Joseph of Arimathea and the Knights of the Round Table who ruled Scotland, and Joseph of Arimathea was the rich man that buried Jesus. So we all have our roles to play to establish the kingdom and to carry on the work that Christ put us here to do. So he said the West, he was from Igbo, which, as you can see, I did in part 1 of the video. That came from the word Igbo or Eber or Ibe, which is Heber, Abraham's forefather, who was a descendant of Shem. Okay, and the patriarchs, Shem's children are Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. And some of the Igbos say they descend from the tribe of Gad. So I'm sure there were other tribes there too, because usually where one tribe is, there are others. So he said they were sold as slaves. They got their salt from wood ashes, and they were prisoners of war. They had a very rich land. They had pineapple, corn, tobacco, spices, pepper, fruit, gums, honey in abundance. The blessing of nature, agricultural, all labor in it. And there were no beggars in his land, in Igbo land. That comes from Ecclesiasticus 40 verse 28. It's better to be dead than to be a beggar, and don't live a beggar's life. That's in Proverbs 2. More work so you won't be dependent upon anybody unless you're disabled, you're sick, you're maimed, you're blind. Then of course we have the ministry or the churches or the families that take care of us, or the government, because the government, Christ is the head of the government, and he said the government will be on his shoulders. So he tells us, according to the book of Acts, to take care of those who are sick or in need of help, and we must always take care of those who belong to the family of believers. So he said there was wars, and in his culture there were no white people. Anybody who was white was considered to be deformed, and that is also going back to the scriptures, where if the Israelites had white skin, it was a leprosy plague, because normally they had black skin. You saw that with Moses when the Most High told him to put his hand in his bosom. When it came out, it was white. Put it back, it was as it was before. The same thing happened with Miriam, and the Bible tells you if you got white skin, yellow hair on the Israelites, then that's a sign of leprosy. So he said white meant deformed, because there were no white people in his culture, and he never saw any white people until he became a slave. He said they were visited with rare locust plagues, and you know when sin is in the land, the Most High sent locusts. He said no rain. So the fact that these were Israelites practicing idolatry and sin and all kind of abominations, that's why they went into slavery, and they were visited by locust plagues, slavery, death, destruction. They were conquered. They're now ruled by Muslims. So if they want their rulership back, they got to learn to keep the Sabbath, the laws, the statutes, the commandments, the ordinances, the judgments, the holy days, and the faith of Jesus Christ, as it is written in the Bible, in the scriptures. Remember, a lot of false prophets are going to come in the last days and deceive many. If you don't see it in the scriptures as the apostles preach and the prophets preach, then you know it's probably not coming from the Most High. Okay? So he said the women were warriors. They had the javelin, the shield, the bow, and the arrow. Women were warriors, the militia, broadsword, all work and fought. They had war, kidnappings for slaves. They were from the other tribes, so they always had to defend their village. And as you know, the scripture says God was a troop. They were warriors. He said the servants and the slaves differ from the West Indies. And when they had servants, it was nothing like chattel slavery where you kidnap a man and sell him and he was a slave for life. They had, their servants had food, clothing, lodging. They didn't eat with the free, but they also had slaves and servants and property under them. So he couldn't figure out why people could be so wicked. You should see what he had to say about the whites and why they had slaves, and it was nothing compared to the servants that they had in Africa, which we also had servants too. They're called domestics even to this day, and Josephus said our servants were called domestics. And it's nothing they're free to go, they're free to do whatever. They just come and work in your homes and they go about their business. They can have their own homes and so on, and their own servants if they can afford it. So one of the ships that he talked about was the Industrious Bee. And the religions, he said the creator who smokes a pipe, we don't know about that, never heard of that. So that's probably one of their gods that they were pouring libations to, and they poured libations and oblations at the graves. They wore their full beards, and they sacrificed fowls and beasts at the mother's tomb, and they pour libation. Now you know pouring libation is necromancy, and you're not supposed to do that. He talked about the needlework, so you can look at that in Exodus 26:36. The harvest and weaving and the full moon, and that's definitely Hebrew culture. Animal sacrifice. After that, the animals went to be offered, and it was eaten with bitter herbs. Now we also eat bitter herbs at the Passover and so on. In Jamaica we drink the bitter herbs. It's called cerasee. But Ouladah Equiano said they ate theirs with bitter herbs, which comes from the Passover as well. Numbers 9-11 and Exodus 12 verse 8. He said they practice circumcision. I also have my sons, they're circumcised. He said they had the same feast days as the Jews, and circumcision is something that the Israelites practice, and they're named after the same event as the Jews. He said his name Ouladah means one favorite, so he had name with meaning. They had as many washings as the Jews, you know, the bath rituals, the cleansings. You know, we have the pool where we lived, and they would throw money in the pool and they go there to cleanse. They had the jazz hall, the music hall where we live. All of those things that you see, the type of music, the type of poetry, the food, the culture, the type of praise. For example, we're known as Jaja children. That is a form of Jah, which is a form of Jehovah. We use that as poetry because that's what David called the Most High, and most of us are David's descendants and Solomon's descendants and Nathan's descendants and Paul and Peter and those children of Israel. So that comes down the line. He said there wasn't much swearing except may you rot, may you swell, or may a beast take you. Not much except that. Now, if you want to know how that is similar to Jamaicans and how we curse, we're the only people on the earth who curse in terms of filthy rags, because the Most High say your righteousness is like filthy rags. So Jamaicans, I'm not cursing, I'm just using this as an example. They'll say your bumble clot, that's a rag, clot. Blood clot, if them tell you about your blood clot, it might be the one from your period or one from your wound, but that's your blood clot. And you know your PUSSY clot, what that one is, like your period clot. And your ass clot, or your RASS, you know, the one that you use to clean when you go to the toilet. That's how Jamaicans curse, because we curse in terms of filthy rags, because the Most High say your righteousness is like filthy rags. Also, when David said, not one of them, like, you know, when he was going to meet Abigail and he was going to kill Abigail's husband because of what he was doing when he was watching the sheep and he wouldn't even give him some food. He said not one of them that piss it against the wall is gonna leave. Well, part of the problem we have in Jamaica that came down from that Judah culture is the men, them love piss against every wall and every tree. And when you go to Jamaica, you're going to smell some really stink corners where they still piss against the wall to this day. So that's just in line with some of the cultural stuff that comes down from the scriptures. So he said they don't swear because the Most I tell you, don't swear by heaven, don't swear by earth or anything, because the earth is his footstool and heaven is his throne. So he said they swear, they don't have no swearing, just may you rot, may you swell, or may a beast take you. That's how they talk. They say they purify themselves if they touch the dead. That's in the scriptures as well. When you touch the dead, you're unclean for a certain time. He said the women, at their periods, they have to go through purification in purification huts. That's found in Leviticus 15 verse 19, 15 verse 25 to 26. They had priests, magicians, wise men. The priests come from the Bible. The magicians are why they went into slavery, if they were practicing necromancy and consulting with familiar spirits. He said they calculated time, foretold events, yearly men wore beards. When they died, they were succeeded by their sons, which is a patriarchal society, which is what the Hebrews and the Israelites have. He said when they went to bury their dead, they return a different way from when they came. In Jamaica, when somebody dies, they change up the bed from the way it was to this day. Maybe that's something that came from the Israelites. I don't know, but I can still see that in the culture. They said they even have serpents that crowed like a cock. Some people say they can't believe the serpents speak. Well, read Ouladah Equiano. He witnessed serpents that crowed like a cock. Okay. And that was in the 1700s he wrote that. We're in 2019 now. Okay. They had doctors. They had superstition. They had poisons. Like when somebody was poisoned, if they lift up the coffin, and the corpse fell and they chased the people till they reached to the house where the person poisoned them, then they would know that that's the person who poisoned them. That's like drinking the holy water to find out if like somebody guilty. That's in the Bible as well. And he said he saw it happen in Montserrat in the West Indies when they lift up the coffin, the people dropped it and they ran and they came to the hut where the owner poisoned the girl, and he confessed to the one who being the one that poisoned them. So you can see some of the similar events he was telling you happened in Africa where he lived, and they happened in Montserrat in the West Indies. Similar customs as the patriarchs, he said, and the patriarchs were from Adam straight down to Jacob. Shem, Methuselah, Enosh, Enoch, and so on. Those are the patriarchs. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the 12 sons of Jacob. Those are our forefathers. He said they had similar customs as the patriarchs in the Bible, and they resembled the patriarchs. He was talking about the woolly hair and the complexions, the same thing as in the scriptures. And the Africans or the Israelites, wherever you go, they're going to be of a negroid type with woolly hair, bushy hair, woolly locks, and you'll see the culture of the scriptures in their practices. And he quoted Dr. Gale comments on Abraham and Dr. John Clark, Truth of the Christian Religion. It said his culture, the Hebrew culture, the Igbo culture, was similar to the Israelites, because they had judges, chiefs, elders, and the head of the family like the patriarchs. And they had the law of retaliation, the law of circumcision. They practiced that, the law of sacrifice and burnt offering, the same washing or purification, and the dates as the Jews. And he mentioned that the Spaniards were dark colored like the Indians of America. So that was even in the 1700s. And a lot of the Israelites were also in Spain, and they were also in the Americas from even the days of the Phoenicians. Okay, so There you go. You have Ouladah Equiano, and his book is an autobiography. Okay? And he thought his people were the same as the Jews of the Bible, the Israelites in their captivity. Now, he also said, or Wikipedia said, they followed a 13-month calendar. And you know, a 13-month calendar has to do with the Israelites and the Hebrews, because that came down. He talk about the bankers too, the money changers in Matthew 21:12, Mark 11:15, and John 2:15. We have always had our own treasury, okay? And he said they had senators. Senators is even in the book of Psalms. They had judges, they had elders. So they had a system of government that was a theocracy. And the Hebrews are known for having a theocracy as a form of government, as Josephus tells you, or a commonwealth. The British Empire that was ruled by the Israelites was a commonwealth. And it's still a commonwealth to this day. So most of the countries in the British Commonwealth, you're going to find Israelites there. We also still have common markets or commonwealth nations or communities, as it was set up as a form of government in the book of Acts, as in CARICOM or the Caribbean community. We have some of our brethren in Bermuda, which is near to California, some in South America, some in Belize or Central America, some in the Caribbean islands, some in North America, some in Europe, but we're still called West Indians wherever we are, because Indian was one of the names that we used when Esther ruled India, and Josephus attested that in his book. And West Indians were all the Negroes that controlled the entire West. That's why we still keep that name to this day, because we're native Aborigine Indians, and we trace ourselves back to antiquity, because the Hebrews are a nation from antiquity. Okay, so they had a 13-month calendar in the Igbo culture. So month from the time of I'm reading from Nelson's Bible Dictionary. Month from the time of the institution of the Mosaic law downward, the month was a lunar one, and they do still have that 13-month in their culture to this time. They have a 4-day week. I don't know where they get that from, because we have a 7-day week according to scripture. The cycle of religious feasts commencing with the Passover depended not simply on the month but on the moon. The 14th of Abib was coincident with the full moon, and the new moons themselves were the occasions of regular festivals. Numbers 10, verse 10, 28, verse 11 to 14. The commencement of the month was generally decided by observation of the new moon. The usual number of months in a year was 12, as implied by 1 Kings 4 verse 7, 1 Chronicles 27 verse 1 to 15. But since 12 lunar months would not make but 354 and a half days, the years would be short 12 days of the true year, and therefore it follows as a matter of course that an additional month must have been inserted about every third year, which would bring the number up to 13. So that's where the 13-month calendar comes from. No notice, however, is taken of this month in the Bible. In the modern Jewish calendar, the intercalary month is introduced 7 times in every 19 years. The usual method of designating the months was by their numerical order. Example, the second month, Genesis 7 verse 11. The fourth month, 2 Kings 25 verse 3. This was generally retained even when the names were given. Example, in the month of Ziph, which is the second month, 1 Kings 6 verse 1. The name of the months belong to 2 distinct periods. In the first place, we have those peculiar to the period of Jewish independence, of which 4 only, even including Abib, which we hardly regard as a proper name, are mentioned. Abib, in which the Passover fell, Exodus 13 verse 4, 23, 15, 34, 18, Deuteronomy 16 verse 1, and which was established as the first month in commemoration of the Exodus, Exodus 12 verse 2, Ziph the second month, 1 Kings 6 verse 1, and 37, Bul the 8th, 1 Kings 6:38, and Ethanim the 7th, 1 Kings 8 verse 2. In the second place, we have the names which prevail subsequently to the Babylonish captivity. Each of these, the following 7 appear in the Bible. Nisan the first, which is the Passover, was held, Nehemiah 2 verse 1, Esther 3 verse 7, Sivan the third, Esther 8 verse 9, Bar 1 verse 8, that may be Baruch, I don't know, El I don't know, or maybe that's the month, I don't know. Elul the 6th, Nehemiah 6:15, First Maccabees 14 verse 27, Chislu the 9th, Nehemiah 1:1, Zechariah 7:1, First Maccabees 1. 54, Tebeth the 10th, Esther 2:16, Sebat the 11th, Zechariah 1 verse 7, First Maccabees 6 verse 14, and Adar the 12th, Esther 3 verse 7 and 8 verse 12, Second Maccabees 15 verse 36. The name of the remaining 5 occur in the Talmud and other works. And you know the Talmud was from the tradition of the elders, is not scripture, because a lot of man-made laws ended up becoming the Talmud. That's why Jesus chastised the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the elders, the scribes, that they were teaching for their laws the traditions of men, not the commandments of the Most High. Okay, and other works, and they were Er the 2nd, Targum, 2nd Chronicles 30 verse 2, Tammuz the 4th, Ab the 5th, Tisri the 7th, and Marchesvan the 8th. The name of the intercalary month was V Adar. That is the additional Adar, so that's the 13th month. Okay, so if you want to know the names of them, you have Abib or Nisan, which calculates to March, April, and that was when the Passover was and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And you have Aya or Ziph, which is April to May in the calendar that we have now. Sisan or Sivan, which is May and June. Tammuz, June, July. Ab, which is July, August. Elu, August to September. Tisri, September to October. Bul, so that's the month. So my correction, that is Bul, is the name of the month. That is October, November. Chislu, November, December. Tesbeth, December to January. Shebat, January to February. Adar, February, and then the next to March, and then Ve Adar, the intercalary, or the 13th month, or the additional month. So the Hebrews had a 13-month calendar, and a 13-month lunar calendar is something that is specific to the Jews and the Israelites of the Hebrew Bible. So the identification of the Jewish months in our own cannot be effected with precision on account of the variations that must inevitably exist between the lunar and the solar month. Nisan or Abib answers to March, Ziph or Iyar to May, Sivan to June, Tammuz to July, Ab to August, Elul to September, Ethanim or Tisri to October, Bul or Marchesvan to November, Chislu to December, Tebet to January, Sebat to February, and Adar to March. So we have different calendars now and different calculations of time, and as Eusebius said, everybody calculate their times differently. Enoch in his book said the same thing too, and the times are calculated by the Most High. So man, they have various different calculations. Egyptians and pagans, they calculate stuff billions, gazillions, trillions of years, none of them have been ever able to prove, and we ain't got no trillion-year-old writing from anywhere. But these are the same people who want to come and argue with you over the scriptures that told us to record all things in our generations. So since the Most High say through Christ when he came that we were sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, we have to know who our brethren is. We have a whole bunch of the Hebrews, the Israelites in Africa. Many of them are Christians just like ourselves, but we trace ourselves back to the patriarchs of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We're called Christians now because Isaiah said we were going to be called by a new name, and Christian is the new name. The disciples were called Christians first at Antioch. Peter tells you, if you want to call me Christian, okay. If you want to call me a Jew, it's okay. If you want to call me an Israelite, it's okay. The Bible gave you a physical description of what the Israelites look like, and he said they're not going to change because they are going to make it to the end. And in the book of Revelation, we see the 12 tribes making it to the end. They still have them woolly hair, them black skin, them bushy locks, them poems, them embroidery, them food, them culture, them richness. A lot of mathematicians, doctors, lawyers are in the Igbos, just like in Jamaica. We have a lot of statisticians, mathematicians, plumbers, builders. We have a Master Builders Association. We excel in every single thing that we do, and you see how small we are, which puts us on the top of the world in terms of a lot of things. We have the lowest suicides. No matter how much they try to do to the Negroes, we still survive. Look how many billions of millions got slaughtered in the Biafran War, and the Most High made us survive. So now that you know who you are, you got to go back to the laws, the statutes, the commandments, the ordinances, the judgments, the Sabbath days, the feast days, the holy days, all this Christmas stuff, and those shrines you all have in your houses, consulting oracles, those Catholic images. Exodus 20, no images. All of those things bring destruction. Fast, pray, have your own armies, your own militias, your own military. If uno conquer, nobody can conquer uno. You understand? If uno wrong things, things can't run uno. So you see what happened with Haiti and the islands and Guyana and all these wars that we had to fight to free ourselves from Muslim domination, pagan domination. You all have to do the same thing too. That's why Igbo land now is ruled by Muslims. Muslims have conquered a lot of what Christendom was, because you all allow yourselves to be conquered. And you see they're trying to come to Trinidad and the West to conquer the same thing with their stealth. But look at the prophecies that went out against Ishmael. He was going to be a wild man. His hand was going to be against every man, and every man's hand against him. These people don't read the scriptures that says thou shalt not kill. Them kill themselves and expect to go to heaven to get 72 virgins when there's no sex even in heaven, because our bodies are going to be changed and we're going to be like the angels. We're not going to have human flesh anymore. There's not going to be any sex there. Angels are formed without sex. Adam was formed without sex. Eve without sex. The Virgin Mary gave birth to Jesus Christ without sex. So Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody can come into the kingdom of heaven without being baptized into Christ, without believing on him, without believing he's the Son of God, without following his laws, statutes, commandments, ordinances, and judgments. Look at Psalm 2. Christ's kingdom is being established on the earth. Christendom is Christ's kingdom. He said the kingdom is not going to be here it is, there it is. It's the entire earth is Christendom. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it. When we are righteous, he gives us the best of everything. Ouladah says his land was the best. Look at the embroidered work on your clothes. Look at the beauty of the women. They cover their head. They have the best jewels. They have everything to what they need. You understand? So yeah, y'all need to wear your own hair. Nobody with no wig and stuff like that, because that leads to destruction. No painting of the faces, because the Most High said don't make markings on your flesh. Don't envy your oppressors and choose none of their ways. If your oppressor have straight hair and if you hear that, you have woolly hair and kinky hair and bushy locks and all of them, something that is why we went into captivity. Some of us, some went on to rulership. Not all of us went into captivity, okay? So you see this, they said this came from Marcus Garvey, you know, the UNIA movement, and they use that as their flag. So all Negroes worldwide are descendants of the children of Israel, but not all black people are Israelites. You have used to be Egyptians, used to be Ethiopians, used to be Somalis, and other African nations that were black too, but they were not Israelites. Israelites have a culture that comes from scripture. We are the only people in the earth who had a monotheist creator culture, or creator created the heavens, the earth, and everything in it. That's our culture. We descend from the patriarchs. That's our culture, okay? And the patriarchs are going to make it to the end, because the Most High said so, and Jesus Christ is going to be the ruler of the entire earth, because Jesus Christ, when he's in earth, he's the creator in the flesh. John 1:1. Isaiah prophesied, says he's going to be called Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. The government is going to be on his shoulder when he comes. So we already see those fulfilled. So it's time to go back to righteousness. Men must wear their beards. That's part of the law. Don't be like your oppressors. Wear your beards. Don't have bald head. Those things are part of the law. So you got to go back to the laws of the scriptures.